Okay, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the globe. I am Rose Smith. I am the Events and Community Manager at Femme Palette. Femme Palette has been helping women grow their careers since 2018, and the DEI Palette Club was launched by Femme Palette to bring together experts and enthusiasts in the DEI field. You can find out more about Femme Palette and the DEI Palette Club through our website and social media channels, which I will share in the link on the chat later. Today, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our event on how to get employee resource groups or ERGs right. With us today are Christine Engel, Procurement Operations Management at BASF Coatings, Ekaterina Syromyatnikova, AVP of Global Customer Success and Support at Wrike, and Irina, Veligan, Campaigns Optimization Manager at GEN. This was just a very, very brief and short introduction for our speakers. To begin our conversation, I thought it would be best to ask our panelists to tell us a little bit more about themselves, to give you an idea where they're coming from when it comes to ERGs. So perhaps we could start with Christine, followed by Ekaterina, and then Irina.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you here and to talk with you about ERGs. Well, I work at the coatings division of BASF, which is located in Münster. And 3.5 years ago, together with some colleagues, we started an ERG at Coatings called Women in Coatings. And we did it for our interest in wanting to get women together to see what we can do for each other, how we can grow together, and to change the view and the possibilities also for women, not only with our employer, but in the long run also have an impact in society. And it's a topic that we are very passionate about in our core team. And this is why I am in this.
I guess it's my turn to speak. Hi, everyone. I'm Ekaterina. I have been working in my current company for the last 6 years. So went through a relocation, went through several different roles within the company. And I am the member of committee of our Women of Wrike ERG, which is not the most original name, but has a benefit of actually being contracted to WOW whenever you actually have to spell it, which is great. And the reason why I am on this committee and why I am driving this initiative within our company is twofold. On the one hand, I have faced a lot of different situations in which you can find yourself when you're being a female employee in a tech company, not specifically in Wrike, more of in general. Secondly, I believe that as important as it is to create the right atmosphere and the right environment for women or any underrepresented groups to thrive, it's just as important to have in place some tools and some motions to help the members of these groups actually feel great and be able to speak for themselves. And I'll give you just a very tiny anecdote. Back when I used to be the director of customer support at Wrike, there was one point in time where literally every manager on my team, so everyone who reported to me, would be a man. And at some point, I actually got the question in terms of, is it a little bit sexist for you to have a team like this? Which actually made me question myself. It's great that somebody calls out and double check, okay, what was the actual journey? How did I end up with an all-male team of managers in my department? Turns out I did not have any applications from women for these roles. All of our management roles are mostly within the company, so the employees, the ICs, can apply for them, and we just didn't get the applications, which again made me think that we absolutely need, and I personally need to be a stronger voice. I need to lead by example, and I also need to be part of the motion which creates more opportunities to speak up and to apply and to try and grow for people who, for one or the other reason, just don't feel it in themselves by default to do it.
Hello, everyone. My name is Irina Veligan. I'm Campaigns Optimization Manager at GEN, which is a global company, family of brands, which includes like Avast, Norton, LifeLock, etc. I'm based in Prague, in Czech Republic, but I have very different international background. Yeah, so I lived and worked in 4 countries. So the Czech Republic is my 4th one, and I work in IT for over 10 years. So I know the industry from different perspectives, from different like cultural backgrounds, and how it can impact the leadership, the way how people develop in the industry, and especially women. And I'm passionate to help women to break into IT and to grow in this industry. So when I joined Avast last year, I immediately joined the Women at Avast employee resource group, which we have at this moment. And I was the mentoring lead here. And when we recently joined forces with Norton employee resource group, and now we're part of the bigger company, I'm also helping to lead some of the activities of our ERG, which we'll be talking today.
Thank you so much, Christine, Ekaterina, Irina, for your introduction. I think this is a great time to just dive in. We do have quite a lot to cover in less than an hour. So we did ask our audience if they're planning to start an ERG, and 31 of them did say they are planning to start an ERG. So what should one consider when starting an employee resource group? Perhaps we could start with Ekaterina, followed by Christine, then Irina.
I would say that there are 2 tips, so to say, that are important when you're considering starting an employee resource group. First, you must be passionate about it. Even though it's a great motion, it's a great initiative always, it's extremely difficult to keep it consistent unless you actually at some points feel comfortable speaking to a visually empty room or trying to drive everyone into some activity and having a bit of a lower turnout in the beginning. It does not exist naturally. You need to be passionate. You need to be able to actually face a little bit of rejection or indifference before it actually takes takes off. And the other thing, which stems actually from this one, is don't try to build Rome in one day. Don't try to say, okay, starting tomorrow, we're going to have a strong mentorship program. We're going to have several leadership trainings per year. We're going to have this and that activity. Again, it will be too much. You will be discouraged. It will be a logistical nightmare, and you will not see immediate results. What you can and should do instead is think about the little activities, maybe less formal activities that you can start with, so that you get a small core group of people who participate in these activities, who are also passionate about them. And then starting from there, it will actually beautifully, from my experience, branch off into more people working with these activities and starting their own. So this is how you build almost a following more organically than when you try to do it very much top down.
Yeah, this is also our experience, and I was going to say the same. So it's really important that you have people who are passionate for the topic, because at least at BASF and maybe also at your companies, people do it on top of their normal jobs. It's a voluntary activity, and to bring in this extra time invest, then if you're not passionate about it, it will you will have probably the perseverance to go through with it, especially because it takes such a long time at the beginning to have the turnout, to have people come back to you and say, hey, it's actually cool what you're doing there, and maybe share with you what it means to them or what they are taking with them. And another thing that I think is important, that you can try to find out a little bit, talking to people, on what topic do you want to make an ERG. There are many topics within diversity, equity, and inclusion, and maybe the topic that you want to do an ERG on might not be the right one, and you will, after a certain time, find that out in the turnout and in the reaction of people. So consider should I really start it right now? Do I have people, just like you said, Ekaterina, do I have people like a small group that is joining in with me and that are going together on that way? And then certainly there will be a point through that organic growth that things start happening by their own, so to say.
I want to add one more important thing, which is the leadership support. It's very important to have a leadership support from your company when you're starting an ERG. This is, I think, one of the most crucial parts. We were extremely lucky when we started the Women at Avast in 2021, because by this moment, we already had the big leadership focus and support for D&I activities. We have the D&I unit established in our company, which drove different activities. And it was easy for us to form the ERG and to have a proper support and visibility on what we are doing. So try to compare, like if there is a linkage between the goals of the ERG with the company strategy overall. And if there is the opportunity, you can definitely plug in and start your ERG with the full leadership team support.
Can I very quickly add on this? Sorry for jumping in. Irina, I believe what you're saying is extremely important. Again, bottoms-up initiative works best when there is top-down support. If your leadership team, for one or the other reason, does not see and understand the value of the ERG, you might want to look up on the facts that currently, even in the process of, let's say, acquisitions or raising funds, investments, and so on, the investors are actually looking right now at what is a D&I situation with your company. They will be looking at whether or not you have ERGs. They will be looking at which ERGs you have and how active they are. So this is actually not just a feel-good thing. It's a smart business decision to have ERGs. So you can leverage this when you are looking for support from your management.
Great. I think just to add on to what has already been said, the next question is more on how to pitch the idea of starting an ERG for those companies that don't have any. We did ask the audience whether they have ERGs in their company, and 29 out of the 74 who registered said they don't have. So how can you get the buy-in from the leadership, which is what we've already sort of been talking about? What points should you stress on? What should you kind of, how would you convince the leadership to get the top-down support? And do you need any budget for it? What kind of financial administration should go into this? Perhaps we could start with Irina, followed by Christine, then Ekaterina.
I would say start pitching it as you would do any other business initiative to your leadership team. So start with the vision, what you're going to do and how you would like to improve your employee experience and your company experience in general. When with the mission, like what your ERG will be actually doing and what will be focused on. Then set up the goals, which should be linked with the company overall strategy. Yes, so for example, in our case, it was the percentage of women on the technical and leadership positions improvement. So we can have the direct link with the company strategy. So we have more women on technical and leadership positions. So we are more resilient, we're more innovative, we're more creative. So the company could benefit from it. When it comes to the budget, it's important to see like what type of activities you would like to run. It could be like social activities, like gathering and some events. So you can budget for some external speakers to come. You can also invite your leadership team to participate and advocate for some activities. Or it could be, for example, strategic partnerships. Yeah, when you want to invite other companies to provide some services for mentorship, for networking, for education. So you can think about these activities, put it in budget, show it to your leadership team, and just ask for support. Yeah.
From our perspective at Coatings, we started a little bit different, and I would say that it also works. So when we decided to found the Women's Network, our first idea was to well, we didn't have certain goals when we came together as the core team in the beginning. So our idea was we first will check with our colleagues, what is their interest? Do you want a women's network, and what can we do for them? What would like to, which kind of activities would they like to have? Which kind of formats? And it didn't go very well because our launch event was in the week that the first lockdown happened, so we had to change our plans. But in the end and in the long run, it worked. So we just switched from presence to virtual, and after some time, when we approached the leadership, we already had a feeling of what do we want to do, what are we going to do with maybe surveys or numbers, and what kind of activities do we want to do. So this is also a possibility to approach it. And probably for most people who are on the call, you can use the tools of your company. So depending on what kind of activities you want to do in the beginning, maybe you don't even need a budget or only a small budget, because many tools are available. And this is what we do mostly. So actually we are now 3 years active, taking out half year of the planning phase. And we are having now a budget for the first time. And the first 3 years we did, well, with hands-on mentality and everything that we had at our disposal. So this is also a good possibility, so to say.
I actually completely agree with both previous answers. So again, I do believe that the best initiative is where you already have something to show for it, which is where bottoms up and almost, a guerrilla approach works best, where you do whatever you can with the resources that you have available. But then once you actually see some traction, and this is something you can show, hey, look, this is working. This is something that you can go with and ask for additional budget. Usually, if you're pitching, it's always good to turn something into figures. Just a quick Googling can help you here. Like right now, I'm looking at information that I pulled up from an Accenture report, I guess, which is saying that the annual cost to companies as a result of having to replace employees who departed due to discrimination amounts to something like $64 billion. So I'm not sure if your company has this money to spare. Mine would prefer to put it into other purposes. So in the end, once you already have some traction, once it's not a theoretical idea, but indeed you have, hey, we tried these things, we are actually getting good response. How about we scale it on the one hand? And on the other hand, a strong suggestion, here is how we're supposed to go strategically from here. Here is the success metrics. And here is the investment we need to make it work. This is where you can go, where you can show some figures and you can work. And one more thing I would recommend is look across the company and specifically the leadership team who could actually benefit from having those. In many cases, for example, your HR team would be super happy to have somebody doing the D&I activities, because otherwise they would need to be the ones doing it, and they would actually be happy to have someone drive it. In some other situations, you must have somebody in PR or marketing or employer branding team who would again be super happy just to have you run activities which they can present beautifully on social media. So there are some sponsors you can find who will not be directly in your connections group, and you can find someone who would actually be interested in supporting you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I guess now, let's say you already have the buy-in, you've already figured out how to establish it. What activities do you think would work for an ERG? Maybe this would be depending on what the ERG is about, but then maybe based from your experience, what worked best for you, what didn't. Perhaps we could start with Ekaterina, Irina, then Christine.
Yes. So from my experience, again, not saying that it's equally applicable to each and every company. From my experience, what works best is the less formal events and happenings. So whenever you have an opportunity to actually help people build connections, find some friends, find a group of like-minded people, this is what works best. And in many cases, this is something that you can then use to build more serious motions. So in this manner, most of our first Women of Wrike activities in Czech Republic have been mainly around, hey, let's go and have a brunch. Let's go and see this exhibition together. Let's just have an informal meeting and networking event. And since then, it has grown into some very serious things. Like, I'm very happy to see Christina here on our call, because she's the one who has been running a huge mentorship program for Women of Wrike, which has been extremely successful. But in order for this to work, you need somebody who is already ready to commit to this kind of a project. And in the meantime, because you only have a big bang opening for a mentorship program maybe once a year or so, in the meantime, you still want to keep people very active. Like another super low cost thing that we do every year for International Women's Month, and that lands perfectly every time, is we do a little Slack marathon, where basically I would be posting a little task every day for a week, which could be, today we're taking care of ourselves, do something which is very nice and wellness oriented for you, and then post a picture of this, and you have all the responses. And the next day we're having, let's say, do a little good deed thing, and this is getting a lot of traction. This is getting people to actually interact, post, and this is zero cost. So think about this little zero cost informal activities before you start building onto something big. And it's better to have many small ones than just to have one where you're basically putting all the eggs in one basket.
Yeah, I totally agree with Ekaterina. When we run our International Women's Day celebration and Women's History Month, we have also these weekly challenges in Slack, and it works perfectly for us. So we're about 200 people in the Slack channel, and we're really engaged all 4 weeks of the month. So that's really great activity. Like, what else we're doing? We invest a lot in some strategic partnerships to improve the situation with young girls and women pursuing their careers and education in STEAM. So we created a partnership with some organization like Chiquitas in Czech Republic, like Bot First Girls in UK. This allowed us to conduct also the workshops and educational events for girls and women. And this is how we help also to develop the industry and increase females representation, also like attracting people to this industry.
Very inspirational what you shared about this activities. That sounds a lot of fun, actually. Well, when we started Women in Coatings, we started also with informal activities, which was also due to the fact that no one had the idea of how long the pandemic would accompany us. And this was a good start to generate some connection between the members, so that people could get to know each other, especially when everyone was at home. And we are continuing a mix of informal and formal offers at Women in Coating. So we have informal lunch meetings every month, which is virtually mostly, because over the course of the last years, the community has been quite global. And we also have some smaller informal events on site in Münster. Not yet on other sides of our operational division, because mostly our core team is still based here in Münster. And now actually we're planning to change that, to engage people more also on other sites in other countries, and have, well, maybe we could call it small sub-communities. And in parallel to that, we have sometimes events, sometimes they are smaller, sometimes they are bigger, on certain topics. And this depends a lot on whether people bring topics up, whether they mention, hey, you want to learn a bit about mentoring, for example. We had a mentoring event last month with Femme Palette, actually, with Lucy and Clara. and also other events on the most diverse topics. And something that is very helpful, at least within BASF, as BASF is quite a big company, we have many women's networks, and we share almost everything that we create in content and in events that we offer. So we have really that advantage that everything that people from our sister network, so to say, what they do, we can also share. And mostly we try to focus really on what people ask us about. And then you can also generate other formats that are more just to share information. For example, podcasts or video interviews is also something we are trying to do regularly, or sharing some articles about information on gender diversity. And this is basically what we have been doing so far. Now are coming the big steps, like you mentioned, the mentoring programs and also external activities. They are a bit more complicated, so we are going to tackle them now. There are some interesting activities, and we are looking forward to them.
Thank you so much for sharing these really great ideas. I'm sure the wheels are turning now for those who are planning to start an ERG. And my next question is something that's always on the mind of people who are doing DEI. How do you measure the impact of your ERG? What metrics are important for you? How can you prove that it's been effective and it's doing what it's set out to do? Perhaps we could start with Irina, Christine, then Ekaterina.
Our goal is to increase the female representation in our total workforce. So it means increase in recruitment, advancement, retention, female employees on technical and on leadership position. And we track our progress as the percentage of women in the total workforce on technical and leadership position. We made a good progress here, but I would say that there is a long process to go. Yeah, so comparing to industry like standards, this is about 40% for the large tech companies of the total workforce female representation. We were at 43% last year, but still our goal is to have the 40% of female in the total workforce by 2025.
Wow, this is great. Congratulations. We have not yet that impact in our company. Our main metrics is actually the number of participants that we have in our network, which is a Teams-based platform or Teams-based network. So we are tracking the numbers, the total numbers, which have grown from 35 3 years ago to more or less 370. And what is for us very helpful is the quantity that this number represents from the total share of women of the coatings division. And this is more than 10% globally. So there is quite a considerable number of colleagues represented, connected through that platform. And then we are also looking at the analytics of the Teams tool. And there we have over the, well, in the long run, we have a participation, or let's say a click rate, because people are very shy in reacting or in posting. But we have a click rate and access rate of over 90% in general. So this is showing that people are interested in the content that we are posting, in the knowledge that we are sharing, the events that we are promoting. And less measurable feedback that we get is when people reach out to us on the core team and mention actually that they started to talk to people that they probably never would have had contact if it wasn't for the Women's Network, or that they are talking about topics that they never would have talked about. This is also happening. And this is very much, Ekaterina, what you said about the networking itself. It's not so much about generating content. It's also very much about creating that connection that for some reason women don't tend to women don't tend to do that naturally. I don't know why, but it just is not our normal daily doing, so to say. And this is a very, very valuable and emotional feedback, so to say.
Well, I applaud the data-driven approach that you ladies are applying in your ERGs. I would say that our approach is different in terms of it's significantly more relaxed. We actually do not have an official metric on which we are tracking our success. Right now, I just looked up the number of participants in our global Slack channel for Women of Wrike. It's also about 200 people. Interestingly, our Czech chapter of Women of Wrike channel has 90 people in it. So even though we have several offices all over the world, so I would say that our Czech group is actually one of the most active ones. There are some official programs, like again the mentorship program, where we can track more participation and we can track the sentiment in terms of Christina does the follow-up survey on how successful the mentorship was, if the goals that the mentee set were achieved, and so on. So there are, in some cases, ways to track separate programs or activities. Anecdotally, I do have a lot more female managers on my team now. And I am happy to see that a lot of people with whom I'm connected through our Women of Wrike group actually got a chance to apply for more senior positions, to find ways to expand their skill set. Also, just not to limit ourselves to the female ERGs specifically, we do have, for example, the Wrike with Pride LGBTQA+ community, also globally, and the local chapter in Czech Republic, which I believe is doing wonders to visibility, to people staying and feeling connected. And it actually makes it much more easy to raise some difficult questions where sometimes people can be without any malicious intent hurt or upset because somebody just doesn't know how to do things. Think pronouns, for example. I feel so much more comfortable working with some of the managers who have any non-binary people on their teams in terms of, hey, you kind of screwed up here a little bit with addressing this person with a wrong pronoun, and I don't have to have a first grade conversation in terms of let me explain it to you in really small words why what you did was wrong, but we can have much more meaningful conversations, and in some cases where there are non-easy situations, we can find resolution better simply because we have better visibility. We have people who are committed to educating their colleagues. So that would be another measure of success, which is not easily quantifiable, but I think very high quality.
Thank you so much for sharing your both quantitative and qualitative, if I could even say that, metrics on your ERGs and measuring impact. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about the challenges that may arise and how to tackle them when you're starting or maintaining an ERG? I think in the last few minutes we've been talking about how great it is to start something, but as we all know, not everything is as smooth as we'd like it to be. So perhaps you could share with us maybe some bumps along the way, things that you were a little bit more difficult than what you expected. So perhaps here we could start with Ekaterina, Christine, then Irina.
I did already talk about the low levels of participation which you are bound to face in the beginning of the journey, so I will not dwell too much on this here. I do also see some unexpected challenges where people start to make an ERG something that it's not supposed to be. And what I mean by this is sometimes in my Czech office, when I would invite people to participate in the group, the response I would sometimes get is, I don't need any female empowerment, I don't feel discriminated, which I'm super happy for you if you do not feel discriminated and if you did not face it. And we are not an emergency squad here to fight discrimination every minute of the day. This is also about having a safe space and a friendly space to talk about different topics. This is also a way for you to network. This is also a way for you to educate yourself. And you do not need to necessarily see it as something which has a big agenda, big purpose. Spoiler alert, it does, but it doesn't have to be in a prescriptive and enforcing way. So sometimes you will just get some comments or questions which would be confusing in terms of some people will see it as you fighting against something as opposed to trying to create something. This is the same place where sometimes, unfortunately, you can get from your male colleagues some comments in terms of, oh my God, why don't we have men of Wrike? Why don't you do this? To which my best response is, go ahead and create an ERG, nobody's stopping you. But again, so sometimes there will be some connotations attached to the ERG, which you did not intend to have, which you did not, you're not trying to force anyone to be part of this, and you would still get these questions. Luckily, that's not a very common occurrence, but it can happen.
Yes, actually, we had that experience as well sometimes, also not often, but it happens when you talk about, we are doing an ERG and it's about women, in our case, that people said, but we are far beyond that, we don't need it. Well, yes, we do. So there are many different reactions from many different people, often also from people that you wouldn't imagine that would react in that way. So what you can do then is, well, in some sort of way, gently educate people about the broad range that the topic of an ERG brings, because there is almost always a broad range, because normally ERGs are about people, and people are as diverse as we can be. So it's definitely a question of raising awareness about the topics, and maybe also trying to bring different perspectives. And this is something that continues to happen, actually, also when you are on board already for a longer time. The time question, of course, what happened to us, not from a perspective of people who consume or who join the network, but from the core team perspective. Last year, what happened to us is that we had great plans for the whole year and big ideas of topics and events, and then it just happened that our normal jobs took too much of our time, plus that break time that we didn't have. We all had different circumstances also in our private lives, that we said, okay, we are not able to do everything that we planned for the year, and we had to just stop some activities. Lucky that we didn't communicate them, so we didn't lose our faces. But it happens. This is when you do something voluntarily, it doesn't matter if within your company or without, that you really have to have a very fine-tuned time management to do that and to make it work.
Yeah, I totally agree with Christine. So when one would want to start the ERG, they should have proactive conversation with their manager, and to be open for the feedback that it might interfere with your core role and what you're going to do about it. Yeah, so you as an ERG leader, you need to assert like the balance between your core role and leading the ERG, and also supporting your team as a community member. And when, for example, the ERG leader step down, where is a huge gap? So plan successful like transition, or somebody who will replace you in case if you will not be able longer to proceed with your responsibilities as an ERG leader. This is quite important. We have different number of people participating in community leaders, like from 2 to 6 people in different periods of time. And some people are coming to us. So now we're joining forces with Norton women employee resource group. And it's also another challenge to bring our two ERGs together, both from the organizational perspective, from geo perspective, and it's multi-level task. But now we're trying to figure it out, how to do it better.
Great, thank you so much. We're reaching the last question. So this is going to be the last question to give our audience chance to ask their own questions and to open the discussion to anyone who would like to probably add to what has been said or ask any questions. So this is your last your warning to prepare your questions. The last question is do you have any last tips and tricks on how to plan an ERG or maintain an ERG? So this is kind of the last tidbit of information or advice that you like to share, at least in this portion of the event, and what resources have helped you the most? Was there a guidebook that you read, or a website, or maybe somebody, a position in a company that has helped you plan out to start an ERG? Let's start with Christine, Irina, then Ekaterina.
Well, we didn't follow any guidebook. I would say we followed our intuition, some sort of. I think the basis for our experience is really to talk a lot about what do we really want to do, with what do we really want to commit, with what are we able to commit, to be honest about that, because in the end, it doesn't help if you're stressed out or if you have to permanently cancel things. So passion, honesty, and when you then talk to people to grow your network and to grow the active participants, also to be patient, because you will find the right people to join you in the enterprise, and you will find the right people with maybe technical skills in doing some design or something for your ERG. And it may take some time, but it happens. So be perseverant and don't give up. And yeah, I guess that's it.
Sorry, I was Googling for the reports that I mentioned, which I did find now. I would also say that there is no guidebook on this. Sorry, guys and girls. It's not exactly how it works. I think one of the best resources is actually this kind of communities like Femme Palette and the networking and events and conferences that they organize, looking at how people do it in different companies. There might as well be a guidebook, but I might be biased. I'm not the biggest fan of business books in general. I do believe in most cases you could have a 2-page report, which would probably cover most of the information that is contained in one book, but this is just my personal preference. I do believe that experience and networking is your best chance at actually getting some ideas to inspire yourself, and then just see naturally what lands and what doesn't land in your company. Be very agile, try things. They will fail. Try other things. Some of them will stick eventually.
Building on what Christine and Ekaterina said, I would give an advice to find an executive sponsor for your ERG from the leadership team. So executive sponsor is typically a senior leader who has vested interest in your ERG in the company and who serve as a mentor and bridging the gap between the ERG and the leadership team. So talk to your HR partner or D&I team within the organization and schedule this meeting and pitch your idea proactively. And you will be surprised how willing senior leaderships to support such initiatives. So it will give you more opportunities. So be brave, try it out, and it will work.